One of the reasons that I like trying out new maps in TF2 is that sometimes you just find something that makes you laugh. Like these trees, which are immediately outside of the blue spawn in CP Shige. If you hide in them, you're basically completely invisible. That means you can do stupid stuff like this.
Soldiers in the trees.
Recently I've been playing loads of new maps in TF2. I've been doing that by joining the TF2maps.net test server. Now the maps on that server are all under development, they're definitely not the finished product, they're there to be playtested. But even at the really early stages of some of these maps, they're just already really cool and interesting. So some of them will have an artistic theme that hasn't been seen in the game before, some of them will be trying out a whole new game mode, and some of them are just a lot of fun to play on. Whatever the reason is, even though these maps aren't finished yet, I just think they're really cool, and that they're interesting to talk about. So here are some of the maps that I particularly enjoyed playtesting over the past few months. Okay, let's kick off with our first map, Control Point Shige by Freyja. This is definitely the map that made me laugh the most, and that is not a bad thing. That's partly because of these trains, which seem extra violent and fast and seem to have these extended hitboxes that catch everyone off guard. There are actually 2 active railway tracks on the high ground above Second Point, and that's a tempting area for Blue to push, but the trains are unforgiving. And you know, there's the trees, which, as you can maybe tell by now, I'm a fan of. Certainly these trees are daft, and even though the medic who's getting jump scared by falling soldiers is probably not having a good time, I think this is the sort of thing that gives the map its personality and makes it memorable, so I hope that the trees make the final cut. The map's not just funny killer trains and trees, I had a very fun time playtesting the rest of this map too. It's actually a pretty wide map, possibly wider than this footage would give you the impression of, and it uses that width to provide the player with options, which is something that I'm going to refer to quite a lot as something that I particularly appreciate in a map. What I mean by options is that you've always got meaningful decisions that you can take in how you want to play the current situation. You're not just funneled into the one path. So in Shige's case, while some of the head-on pushes to cap the points are tough, there are meaningful flanks that you can play with. This is particularly true for the final point. If you take the direct approach, you've got all of these cliffs and high walls to push into, which is tricky, but Blue also have access to this big window at the side of the point that can be a great staging area. In the playtest that I had, it did feel like these flanks were maybe a bit underutilised, particularly after the first point, but I suspect that this is just lack of map familiarity from the playtesters. Generally we only have maybe 30 minutes with a map during a given playtest, and it's not always enough time for the players to fully get to grips with how the map works. If I get to play this one again, then hopefully I'll get to see the teams use the flanks a bit more, and hopefully I'll get to drop on more unsuspecting gamers. It's so stupid. Payload Ido Japan and Dust, yes, that is the name of the map, by Idolon. So for my tastes, and for what I like in a TF2 map, this is one of my favourite new maps that I've seen in the past few months. I got to playtest this one a couple of times, and so far I think it's a cracking map. I like the layout everywhere, really. Basically everything worked, there weren't any real problem spots that I ran into on my playtests. You always have options without it feeling overly vast. So, you know, there's no like weird empty spaces that don't serve much purpose other than to just confuse the player. It's all really cohesive, really good so far. And the theming is looking good as well. The outdoor industrial / train yard area leading into the nuclear power plant, that makes a lot of sense. And I particularly love the nuclear reactor pool that is the finale of the map. Dropping a payload cart into there, making it explode. Love that, it's a really cool finale to the map. When you take a look at the map's layout, it pretty regularly does this thing that you'll see on official payload maps, which is having the payload take the path along the low ground, while having some strategically important high ground nearby that Blue need to win before they can start making, reasonable progress. Badwater's a really good example of this. If you think about the first point, it has the area over the tunnel that Red will typically hold. And while you can sometimes squeeze in a sneaky cap past the defenders, generally you're going to have to dislodge them from that position above the tunnel before you win the point. It's the same idea for the second point. If red managed to get a hold on the roof area, then as long as they're up there, it's going to be difficult for blue to push the cart. It makes for dynamic gameplay because the teams are incentivized to care about and to fight over these two different yet connected areas at the same time. Idol, Japan and Dust, man, that is the name of the map. Yeah, it emulates this idea, particularly around the second and third point, but it's got elements of this all over the map. And as much as I like seeing, really radical, totally brand new ideas and maps, I also just love seeing proven, fun gameplay concepts being implemented in new environments, because that is generally going to result in good gameplay. Combine that with some interesting flanks and you've got something that I really enjoy. Speaking of interesting areas, apparently this is a boy tunnel, or so I'm told by the chat in the server, although I'm not really sure what a boy tunnel is. I don't think it's a euphemism. If I like this map, does that mean I therefore like boy tunnels? I don't really know. Anyway, I really enjoyed this map overall. It's probably one of my favourite payload maps I've played in the last couple of months. I imagine the name of the map may be subject to change, just because Idol, Japan and Dust is a bit of a mouthful. If you are taking suggestions for a new name for the map, consider Payload Boy Tunnel, and then stop considering it, because that would be a terrible idea. Payload Chateau by JeanPaul. Starting in Blue's spawn room, you follow a mysterious tunnel into the depths of the cavern, leading to a pool illuminated by strange fairy lights. You descend into the depths of this pool, further and further. What lies down here? A portal? A strange light? There are no answers, yet you are already beginning to drown. Why is this here at all, you ask? Why is there a pool in spawn that serves no gameplay purpose whatsoever? Is it purely for the atmosphere? For the aesthetic? The answer is yes, because this map is French. Chateau has a very distinct aesthetic. The landscape in particular, rather than comparing it to another TF2 map, I would say it feels like walking around a World of Warcraft dungeon that starts with like an outdoor section. I couldn't tell you why, can't explain it, but I somehow felt like I was about to pull an elite mob by accident and the tank would shoot at me, and I would get kicked from the group. And visually, it's pretty different too. I mean, you can see for yourself, this ain't Dust Bowl. The different points of the map have a lot of variety in them as well. So first point is a big open space on the edge of a lake, while second point it tightens up a bit with an area that has different odd and interesting heights, while the finale of the map takes place through the corridors of the chateau itself and then into the final area, with Blue frantically holding off the defenders that are spawning in from above. It throws a lot of different elements at the player, and it does so with an art style that isn't quite typical of TF2. I think that the map feeling so different from a regular TF2 map in combination with that art style, as well as, and I'm going to use a word that makes it sound like a bad thing, it's really not, some of the oddness of the gameplay spaces, it means that I think this one, how much you like it is going to come down to personal taste, maybe more so than most maps will, but personally I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed second point especially, jumping around as gunboat soldier, really felt like I was in my element there, really liked it. I believe that since I've played it, Chateau has undergone some further detailing work. Given that it's already a visually striking map, I'm really interested to see what the end product is going to look like. Payload Tibet by Freyja. So for this map, I can actually only talk about the first 2 points out of the 4 on the map, because during the playtest time that I had with it, that was as far as anyone could get. Even after we had multiple team scrambles, nobody could get past the second point at all. Now, that sounds like we were having a miserable time. But here's the thing, we weren't. Well, I know I was certainly enjoying the map, but I did get the feeling that the rest of the server was enjoying it as well. And I think that that's a sign that you're onto something good. If you've got a map where players are having fun, and it's just fun to play on, even if they're not getting a successful push onto second, I think it shows that what you've got is fun, and that's the most important thing. So both the first and the second points were tough to crack. I think this is because red always has the high ground. While there are flanks that blue can take to try and contest that high ground, they're either a long walk to get to that point, or you have to go through a sniper sightline to do so. But it stays fun and interesting because while pushing is tough, certainly, the map does give you various ways that you can go about attempting to crack red's hold. It's not like you get stuck because Red are just mindlessly spamming a choke point. I always found that trying to contest the high ground and the flanks was a pretty reasonably interactive situation, and I enjoyed that challenge. I enjoyed trying to work out how to beat Red's hold, and the map gives you enough spaces and opportunities that it feels like you can make a difference. It's just from the playtest that I was in, Blue just had a little bit too much to deal with all at once. I think that was the main feedback that everyone had for this map, and playtest I was in anyway. So yeah, really interested to see how any future revisions might make life a bit easier for Blue, if that is, an issue that was replicated in other playtests. And hopefully I'll actually get to play the third point, because I want to see what's going on with that cool waterfall area as well. Payload Phoenix by Defcon. Ah, I hear you say, this isn't a custom map, this one's actually in the game. Well, you're right, but I played it for the first time during a playtest back in May on the TF2 map server before it was added into the game as part of the summer update. The footage that you're looking at just now, that's from that playtest. As far as I could tell, the map, when I playtested it, is basically identical to the final version that's in the game. And of course, you guys have probably all played it by now and you've got your own thoughts on it. Personally, I really liked Phoenix. I was thoroughly impressed by it on my first playtest as well. So because you all kind of know about it already, rather than dwell on the map itself, I'll take the time to talk about something that I've glossed over a little bit so far, which is the map testing process itself, what that involves, and how people are able to play maps like these, like Phoenix, before they're fully released. So I mentioned the tf2maps.net server, which is where these playtests happen. tf2maps.net, that's an online community for those with an interest in creating maps for Team Fortress 2. It's got loads of resources for map creators to use and to learn from, and it has a huge repository of custom maps and assets that have been created over the years. It also hosts 2 in-game servers, one based in Europe and one in the US, where the community can playtest maps that are currently under development. Playtests are important because it allows the author to see how the map is being played in a real live in-game setting, so they can see what's working well on the map and what they might want to change in any future versions. The playtest also allows playtesters to give feedback to the author of the map, and the TF2 Maps server is really good at encouraging players to give feedback that's both constructive and positive. And that constructive environment is important, and it's a big part of the reason why I like the server so much. If you are interested in the playtests, you can join the TF2 Maps Discord. The playtests are announced in there right before they happen, and they're pretty regular. I'd say there's at least one session most days of the week. Certainly there's more than I've got time to join in all of them, so you'll absolutely have opportunities to join and see what's going on. King of the Hill Studio by Emil Rusboy. So I play this one quite a lot, and it's always pretty fun. It's got a solid layout, it's a pretty conventional 3 lanes design, and it has the King of the Hill control point on the lower ground, a little bit of high ground off to the side. It plays totally fine with like a half-full server, and even better as more players joined, and I think that's a good sign for like pub and casual play. But where I think this one's really going to stand out is with the theming. It has a film studio theme. I've not seen that before in a map, but makes complete sense for Team Fortress 2. And if there's one way to make a King of the Hill map in particular stand out, then it's having a unique and memorable theme. It's really cool to see how the theming has become more detailed with each new release of the map. Really looking forward to see how this one looks in its final form. And now for our final map for today, King of the Hill Paraberg by MilkMaster. Or I should say King of the Hills, because this map has 2 points to capture. So what that means is that once your team captures one of the points, your clock will start to run down 1 second at a time, just like it would in regular King of the Hill. But if you control both points at the same time, your clock will run down twice as fast, 2 seconds at a time. And because the other team isn't in control of any of the points, their clock won't run down at all. If you manage to hold on to both of them, your team is going to build up a lead. So the result of that is it plays a bit more like a domination style game mode. I immediately love this idea, both because it made this map more interesting and also because it's one of those gimmicks that you see and you immediately start thinking about how it could be used in different situations and in different maps. So what about if you had this in a much bigger map with even more control points? My mind immediately jumped to Arathi Basin from World of Warcraft. That has 5 points in play at the same time. Could something like that work in Team Fortress 2? Or you've got CP Standen, that's in the game already. How would a map like that work if it had King of the Hills rules? So many possibilities. I would love to see what mappers will come up with using this gimmick. As for Powerburg itself, I think the feedback that I left is that the mid area feels a bit underutilised at the moment. There's not much reason to go there, so the fighting is isolated around the caps and the spawns rather than feeling like there's a back and forth between the 2 points themselves. But even in its current state, I had a lot of fun with it. Very interested to see where this one goes, and really interested to see if the King of the Hills idea is picked up in other maps too. I was almost finished editing this, and I'd searched for Powerburg on the TF2 Maps website. I couldn't find it. It looks like it may have been removed, so it's possibly no longer being worked on. If that is the case, then that's fine. In fact, I'd say that the majority of maps that are playtested don't get to final version for one reason or another, and we shouldn't put expectations on the authors to finish all of their maps. I'm going to keep Powerburg in the video because it's still interesting to talk about, just thought I'd add in this note at the end, and also to make the point that work in progress projects are sometimes never finished. That's just the nature of it. Nobody knows it to anyone else to finish what they've started, and if they want to stop working on it, then that's totally fine. Final note before I close this out, just wanted to say that while I'm talking about some of the maps I've enjoyed playtesting this summer, there were loads of maps that I also enjoyed, but I couldn't fit into this video, so this definitely isn't an exhaustive list of all the maps that I like. If you find all of this stuff interesting, and you're not already involved in the playtests, I recommend you give them a try. I've put the relevant info and links in the description below. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, then stick around. I've got plenty more footage recorded, so there may well be more of these to come. Until then, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.